for having got this church built. He raised money, they had it all bar a very small amount, £50 or something, collected by the time the first bricks were laid. That church is still standing on Chapel Hill in Bega. It's very prominent, and beside it is the new Wesleyan church. It's used as their hall now, but in this building there is also a marble plaque dedicated to him and the husband. My husband and I just have come back from down there, and I know Ken and Janet have been down there, and he's known in Bega Historical Society and anyone who knows history of the place as the father of the Wesleyan Church. So he did a complete flip from what is his wild days in Ireland, that he sounded like he should have probably been a convict, to doing this by the time he was 80 or 85. With their children, Noble also was a shoemaker in Sydney. Went to Bega for a while, but went back to Sydney with his family. And Noble, so this was Joseph's eldest brother, the very first one that came to Ireland with them. Jane, when she was married, went to South Australia with her husband and had her family in South Australia. I traced them to Adelaide, and they had quite a huge number of children, as you can see over there. The next, as they're listed under her name, I think there was about 10 of them. She lost 3 in a row, but she kept trying. James, the next one, didn't marry. He had an unfortunate accident. A tree fell on him and he suffered terribly in the Bega hospital for 7 weeks. Those days there was probably not much they could do, and he passed away from that dreadful accident. He was a farmer in a big way. He, at the time, owned a huge amount of land up round north of and west of Bega, and he took to carpentering, and I can only think that maybe he was on one of his properties after wood for his carpentry work, and this mishap happened. A fellow put him on his cart and took him into town, but it was a pretty sad ending. The next one along, don't have my glasses on, but from my memory, the next one along should be Elizabeth. Elizabeth, she was 40-something when she married. She married a fellow from Sydney who had been married before, but his wife had died. So she was 41 when she married and only had the one child, but he had 4 children from his previous marriage. So, and he was a photographer. So I traced them from Sydney down through Bega into Victoria, into the western part of Victoria near Echuca for 7 years. They came back to Cobargo, just south of Tilba. They were there for a while, went back to Sydney, retired in Sydney. The next one is William. So there's 2 Williams, William Senior, William Junior. He had a huge family, because you can just, without even reading them, you can see the list of children underneath him. He was a farmer also who ended up in central Tilba with Joseph and had a big property called Inglewood in central Tilba. So all his kids went through Central Tilba School, and he was known to do some lay preaching as well, still following the Wesleyan Church. The next one along is John. John was the mystery man and got me intrigued. Mum had nothing on him. Mum had his name and knew that he existed, and we didn't know whether he was married, had kids, nothing. So he now is married. He's got, I can't read it from here, several children. 6. And I've since traced 6, okay, since traced them to New Zealand. They went to New Zealand eventually, and the family, his children were all over there. They died, husband and wife died in New Zealand. I'm not sure about, haven't gone through the branches down to see if there's still people over there. But he gave up his farm. He had farm selected land, gave it up, decided he didn't want to be a farmer. He then became a brick maker and made bricks at a place near Bega. It was okay for a while. Then took to the sea, became a fisherman in a big way around Tathra, but quite responsible for setting up things around the Tathra Wharf. He opened his own seafood delivery business around town by horse and cart. I've got adverts of him spruiking how good he was and freshest fish daily, this sort of thing. He eventually developed into opening an oyster bar. And he also had a tobacconist as well. So he became a very interesting character to follow, and most of it was found through newspaper articles and adverts. He was always in the newspaper. His cart was always being run into by a horse that had bolted and tipped over. He was getting water out of a creek and a wheel went down in a rut and up a bank and he ended up in hospital with a broken hip. And there's just all these stories. He really is quite a character. The next one after him is Marianne. Marianne was another one like Elizabeth, who didn't marry till she was 40-something, and she outlived all of them. She was 96, I think, or 94 when she passed away, and she had a beautiful singing voice, like my Auntie Nita. So Auntie Nita, yeah, and they all were great singers. They all, because they had this church following, they were all known for leading the singing at church, but she was a soloist, and there was quite a few articles about her and a solo performances and things like that, right through to when she passed away. She married George Boardman, who was a painter and decorator, had quite a lucrative business in Bega, so they were very traceable, once again through adverts and articles. The next one after him is Joseph. We know lots about Joseph, so that's where he fits in. He's the second youngest out of these 9, and then after Joseph is Charlotte. Charlotte again, I think she was the third one to marry. Even though she was the youngest, she married quite young and had quite a big family. Mum didn't have anything on her apart from we knew that she existed. Yes, and she married John McDonald, and he was a cheesemaker at Bega, so once again involved in the dairy industry, and I've traced them to New Zealand as well. So Charlotte passed away in New Zealand, and so did John, and their kids are over there. Some of them went to the wars, so they've been quite traceable as well, but I haven't got to the bottom of it all. So that sort of puts in perspective the huge family it became. Like from Ellen and William from Ireland, they've added 9 children in the next generation. From those 9 children, they added 50 people, 50 children to the next generation. So William and Ellen ended up with 50 grandchildren.
How many now is there?
Poor Dad.
6 of them passed away as young children, but yeah, so left with 44. So you just think about all the families that started up in Australia, how quickly Australia got colonised, and that sort of thing happened because in those days that was the size of the families they were having. Poor Ellen died quite youngish. She was only 50-something, I think. She'd only seen Noble and Jane, the 2 eldest, get married out of her 9 children. She'd only met or knew about 8 of her grandchildren. So that's a bit sad. Coming round the wall, I put up over here this coat of arms thing because we're not sure, and unless we pay a great deal of money to trace heraldry to find out what our coat of arms is.